Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I'm thrilled to welcome Cody Dericks to the podcast today to talk about Vampire Circus, released 50 years ago in 1972. It came out kind of throughout the year, different places, but we'll say it was about a year ago now. Vampire Circus. How are we doing, Cody?
We're doing great. I'm so happy you brought me on to talk about, a film we all know, love, remember, cherish.
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow I'm watching The Godfather for that episode recording. But really, I mean, who cares about The Godfather?
Yeah.
Like, really, it's about Vampire Circus. When we think of the year in film of 1972, like we think like maybe Cabaret we think of, and then the Godfather. I think most people prefer the sequel, and I mean, it's really Vampire Circus.
Oh yeah, we were all buying tickets to the circus. Get your popcorn here.
Had you heard of this before?
No.
No,
not until you asked me to watch it.
You didn't even hear about it before. This wasn't on like the top of your list.
Nope.
What?
Not. I can't even make a joke. I'd never heard of this film before, and I kept forgetting the name of it when I had to remember to watch it. I was like, I kept calling it Camp Vampire.
Oh, you're my first guest who went to watch the movie and then forgot what it was called. And couldn't find it.
Well, by the time I was watching it, I was like, Vampire Circus, got it. But I kept misremembering what it was called, who I was.
So did you watch this? I watched it on Tubi, where you get like annoying ads every half an hour. And,
I watched it on Hoopla, which is a library app.
Oh,
the Great Chicago Public Library.
Oh, they have Vampire Circus through this service.
Yes, and because it's a library app, yeah, it's funded by the taxpayers. So thank you.
Okay.
My money going to a good cause.
I watch it on Tubi. Every 30 minutes, we get some food ads and things, and back to Vampire Circus. And I was watching this like how many movies on Tubi have vampire in the title? And like to find Vampire Circus, it was like 17 slides to get to this movie. And I mean, I'm like, the amount of just random, pardon my language, shit out there, like on services like Tubi, just these random movies. I'm like, what are these films? Like movies that nobody will ever watch.
Yeah, I have to imagine this is a movie that the accountants of whatever studio distributed it, when we pinged in their system as it was, watched essentially, and they had to, funnel the rights or whatever, they probably were like, what is this? Why is anybody watching this?
Oh, interesting. Two attractive young men, Oscar pundits, are watching Vampire Circus.
Okay,
we need to look into this.
Something good's going on now on the internet, finally.
One young man, I should say. You.
Oh my God.
Not me.
Well, Film at 50 is because I'm...
Film at 50.
Yeah, that's my age. That's semi-centennial, right?
Well, this podcast makes me feel young because I think, oh, Film at 50. I'm not even close. And then as I get closer to that age, then it'll start to maybe I need to do Film at 25, and then I'll feel younger.
Yeah, you gotta have a big celebration your birthday year. Yeah.
My 50th birthday year
for this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be doing this in 13 years, but I've said before, I'll say it again, I would like to get to Jaws in 75. That's the goal, and then we'll see how life is in 2025. I don't know what we're going to be doing in 3 years.
I can't tell you what it'll look like. Not looking good.
You'll be winning an Oscar in 3 years. You won't be talking about the Oscars. You'll be winning one.
I'll be winning an award from a man named Oscar somewhere, I'm sure. And it won't be official. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be hanging out with a man named Oscar.
Yeah, that's my goal. My Oscar.
Yeah. I don't know if Vampire Circus ever had a shot at winning any Oscars. What do you think?
Oh boy, I mean, like, you watch this and you're taken away by the performances and the attention to detail. Bob Fosse, who? I
mean, yeah, it's like why give Cabaret 8 Academy Awards? It seems kind of a lot. I mean, the movie didn't even win Best Picture. It's like, why waste 8 Oscars on a movie that doesn't win picture? I mean, at least 1 or 2 for Vampire Circus. I mean, I don't think they have makeup for 72.
No, not yet. No.
Do you know when what year that category?
81, I believe, because it was right after The Elephant Man.
Okay.
because they were like,
because I remember The Fly won. I remember that was a big deal when The Fly won that, because it was like a really grisly R-rated horror film, and it won an Academy Award. That was kind of unheard of.
Well, the first one to win Best Makeup was American Werewolf in London, I believe.
Oh, there you go.
Another
so that came out in
horror
81, right, for Rick Baker. So that would have been the 82 ceremony. Yeah. So that's really cool. That's what I love about the Oscars, that they have a couple of those categories that, like, you would never see The Fly or American Werewolf in London winning Academy Awards normally, but because of that category.
Beetlejuice, yeah.
Did Beetlejuice win an Oscar?
Won Best Makeup. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how did I not know that?
I know. And I say this all the time, frequently, to anybody that will listen to me, but I really do think in makeup, especially, that's a place where more horror movies should be recognized. I mean, like, you think of how many iconic makeup looks there have been in horror that like both push the genre and expand your idea of what a movie can do, and they get no attention. And
I mean,
movies like Victoria and Abdul get it instead.
I mean, Frankenstein from 31 on the documentary on the DVD, there's all sorts of great material about like the work that it took to make Boris Karloff look like that. And that was, that would have been like 3-4 years into the Oscars. I mean, it seems kind of crazy. It took till the 80s to bring Best Makeup in. That should have been there earlier.
Bummer.
We can't go back and fix it.
No,
that's okay. But makeup is still going strong. Didn't Rick Baker win for The Wolfman? It was kind of a random
in 2010.
Win. Like, didn't that movie come out in like February 2010 and kind of came and went, and nobody really talked about it? And then it
Can't
won.
Say I've seen it, but I kind of love that. I love that category more than I would say any other at the Oscars. It doesn't matter when you came out, you can be in consideration, or like how good your movie is. Like Suicide Squad won.
Right, Suicide Squad won. That was. It's always weird in a year where like Suicide Squad wins best. You know, an Academy Award, and then other deserving films that got 10 nominations go home with nothing, and then you're like, oh, that's a winner, and that's a nominee.
True. Yeah. Academy Award winner, Suicide Squad.
Academy Award nominee, The Irishman. Right?
Yes.
But I always feel bad those movies that get like 10, 11 nominations, and then they don't win one. It's like,
right. Thanks for playing.
Like, give them one, so then they can say they're a winner.
Yeah, make up a category, Best Irishman.
Like, didn't Zero Dark 30 like tie for one Oscar win?
Sound editing, yeah.
That was all it won, right?
Presented by Mark Wahlberg. Yeah. I remember him going, "It's a tie," and he went like, "I'm not kidding," or something like that.
Did he say it like Ingrid Bergman in 60?
The Lion in the Winter. Yeah.
It's a tie. Yeah. Ingrid Bergman was shocked. All right, so Vampire Circus did not win or get nominated. I forgot to look up if it got nominated for anything. It might have like one lone nomination at some random little tiny festival.
I can't even imagine. Let me see while I'm thinking about it.
IMDb, when you scroll down, it'll say like 3 wins, 2 nominations.
There's not even an option.
And if it doesn't even
there's nothing there. It's a blank space.
Damn it. That's sad. It's funny. It's like, it used to, remember in like years past, it used to be like, if it didn't get any Oscar nominations, but it got a Golden Globe, like it would say like nominated for one Golden Globe. Now it doesn't say that.
I know, we were there. IMDb.
Have you talked about this?
Justice against the Golden Globes was, we're not even gonna, and they put it down in the alphabetical order.
Now it's not at the top, right?
It's down by the Goya Awards. Yeah,
the Screen Actors Guild is the same way, right? Isn't Screen Actors
Guild? BAFTA and SAG are still at the top.
Are they at the top?
And maybe Critics' Choice.
I feel like I've searched for SAG before. I'm like, did this get a SAG? And I have to like scroll to the bottom to S. I feel like I've had to do that. So you think BAFTA is up there too? I know
BAFTA. I know is up there. BAFTA will, if a movie only got a BAFTA but no Oscar, it will say like one BAFTA.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
This is all relevant for Vampire Circus, which swept the BAFTAs, if I remember correctly.
What would you have said if you came on here and you were doing your research and it showed 9 BAFTA nominations for Vampire Circus?
Well, I would assume it was for the Bat Fuzz.
It'd be like Batas.
Yeah,
like you just looked at it you didn't look at it close enough.
Not my best little joke. That's all right.
Oh, it's fantastic. Vampire Circus. So this came out it was released in the UK in April 1972. Then I think it hit the US like in the summer, like it came out a little bit later in the summer. Yeah, so the whole world got to enjoy this kind of like sporadically throughout the year. But here's the premise. For those of you who don't know what this is about, it does have vampires and it does have a circus. So it's not one of those titles that misleads you.
No, you're getting what you paid for.
You know, it's not one of those movies where you're like, what? Mm-hmm. A circus setting is combined with an unusual vampire story in this Hammer tale. In 1825, a mysterious circus visits a Serbian village cut off from the world by a plague outbreak, and corpses start being found totally drained of blood. What would you like to add to that?
I mean, they say it's an unusual vampire tale. I don't think it is. I think it's pretty usual.
It's got the cross, you know, there's not a whole lot of like
stakes through hearts, bats.
Yeah. We got lots of action with like a group of men like trying to stake the vampire and trying to hit, like, don't they say out loud like get the heart, like it's not, there's not, they're not changing anything about vampire lore here.
No, it's not Twilight. No, this isn't restructuring the mythos of the vampire.
I would like to have seen a Twilight story circa 1972. Would be interesting. But we just talked about another vampire movie a few weeks ago on here, The Night Stalker, which was a TV movie that also had vampires. And I was also like, okay, we're getting in the 70s, like maybe they'll do some cool new things with vampire stuff. And that movie and this movie, it's still just the same old. Like there's not like, one of my notes I put in here, I said, you know, without the nudity and without the gore, like if you would ask me what year this came out, I would have said like 65.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I think we're not at the point yet where they can, I mean, we're only 40 years away from Dracula at this point, and we're only
Dracula's 31,
and then we're only like 5 years away from the censors not being a thing anymore, basically. So they, you know, now's the time to look back at the vampires, do the classic things you always do the vampires, but with a modern twist. We're not gonna, you know, censor anything.
Yeah, I don't know how far we are from like a kind of a unique take on the vampire genre. I liked Let's Scare Jessica to Death, which came out in 71. That was kind of like a little bit of a twist on the vampire story.
Yeah.
A little different. Like it felt a little bit more modern for the 70s versus a movie like Vampire Circus, which feels more 60s.
True. Yeah, this does feel very late 60s. I was getting very kind of like Italian horror vibes almost.
Right.
I don't know. I can't describe exactly why, but I think the color of the blood specifically felt very like giallo.
Oh, that's been a thing for me. I don't like when the blood looks super fake, even if it's like a cheesy horror movie.
Yeah,
like you'll see it in like serious dramas, and there'll be a scene with blood, and it's like orange, and I'm like, what's happening right now?
No,
like there wasn't anyone on the set to say maybe try something different.
Yeah, that's some food dye there, babe. It's not looking good.
Like there's a reason Hitchcock shot Psycho in black and white.
Chocolate syrup. Thank you very much.
So we can do the Hershey syrup, and it's like everyone's fine with it. I would like to see that moment in color, just with them be like, what? Okay. I don't know what Janet Leigh was eating. Like, what's going on right now? Bad. But she got an Oscar nomination, so we're
true.
Should have won, Cody. She won the Golden Globe, did not win the Oscar. Went
should she have won that year?
Oh, I love Janet Leigh, and I think she should have an Oscar.
I'm fine with that. Yeah. It's kind of a weird nomination.
It's one of my favorite films. I mean, it's hard because she's only in the first like 40 minutes, so it'd be a little bit like if like Drew Barrymore got a nom for Scream or something, which I also would have been.
My language,
which I also would have been.
I can get behind you.
Someone posted that on Twitter for me yesterday. It's like Drew should have gotten a nomination. I'm like, yeah, it never would have happened. There's no way. No. It's 10. No, and what is that? 13 minutes? I mean, it's very brief
at best. And she's not even on. Yeah. And I'm one of those people who's like, I don't care how small it is. If it's 2 minutes, you qualify for a supporting actor or whatever.
Beatrice Straight, network.
Hermione, what's her face for Room at the Top, with like 5 minutes of screen time.
Wait, what?
Hermione, here it is. Hermione Badley. Oh, she was nominated in 59. It was
59, and her performance lasted how long?
Oh boy, let's see. Now I'm Googling. 2 minutes and 19 seconds.
She was in the movie for 2 minutes and she got an Oscar nomination.
And 19 seconds. No, she did not win.
Is it more than one scene?
I believe it's like 2 or 3, like spread really thin.
Oh, okay. So she's in 3 scenes and it lasts 2 minutes and 19 seconds and they gave her an Oscar nomination.
I remember her being good. So
what could you possibly done for 2 minutes that made it worth
you gotta watch the movie.
Would she just like come into a room and scream at top of her lungs and run out like bawling and people 3 times?
Less.
It's like someone pointed out to me today that Viola Davis, she won supporting actress for Fences for a performance that lasted 54 minutes of the movie. And she was nominated for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom for a performance that lasted 27 minutes in the movie.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I think she's a lead in both those movies. I'm personally not somebody who like is sitting there with the stopwatch and using that to determine category placements.
On your second watch?
Yeah, I also don't really care about category placement. I'm not one of those, gays who gets up all up in arms about category stuff. I don't really care. Unless it's egregious, but like I'm not really too upset about it.
Yeah, well, I posted this morning like who should have beaten Viola Davis, and there's just like so much of like that was a lead performance. How dare they? I am on the same way. I don't really care that much either. It's like, I mean, when Jamie Foxx was nominated for supporting actor for Collateral, that's when I said, okay, it doesn't matter. You can be in every frame of the movie and get supporting actor.
Right. Or like child performances like Haley Steinfeld, who is the lead of True Grit, being in support.
Tatum O'Neal for Paper Moon. She's in every scene, I believe, of that movie, and she won supporting actress.
Yeah, I don't really care.
So it is what it's like going back to the beginning. I mean, I don't know if there was that much category fraud in the first couple decades of the Oscars. I have to look, but I feel like today it's just we just kind of we deal with it, and the problem with it is the one who has more screen time often will win because there's just more there.
Right. Alicia Vikander. Hello.
Yeah. I always think of that. She won for Ex Machina.
I know. We can all tell ourselves that. It doesn't feel like she didn't. So
like,
yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't get too up in arms about category fraud. There's war, some countries are at war.
You came on here today, you're like, oh, finally I can just talk about a horror film. I don't talk about Oscars.
Right. Well, oh my God.
It's just, it's hard. So everybody, we're recording this in February. The Oscars are coming up. We're in the midst of predictions and everything. So it's on the top of our minds. By the time this episode airs, we will have moved on. And,
I mean, Licorice Pizza
we will
could have
finally
been
find out
Circus,
who won Best Actress, because who the hell is going to win Best Actress this year? There's like, I don't know how you predict that category.
Don't get me started.
Okay.
We will be here all day.
I'm like, it could be any of them. Like, I don't know how
Nicole Kidman.
You think so for that?
I've been predicting her since it was
she is the most
screened.
Okay.
And I got the Golden Globes right. So
she's the most likely to win. I think that the fact that the movie didn't get picture or director or screenplay shows that there's weakness, though.
Sure, but neither did any of the others in the category besides Lost Daughter. That only got screenplay.
Lost Daughter got screenplay.
Yeah, everything else
supporting actress.
Kind of nothing. Exactly.
I just, for that, like, she's won before for a better performance in The Hours.
I mean,
like, really? For that?
Renee Zellweger and Judy. It happens.
It's just so boring, Cody, if she's the winner.
Lately they've been getting Oscars to like the same people over and over again. Like Frances won really close together.
Right. That went out the window. That was I said Frances can't win. She just won for 3 billboards. That's not going to happen. That was like, oh, okay. So you can just win again. Okay.
Yep. Doesn't matter.
And I think this year there's going to be a lot of like the spread of votes for all 5. I don't think it's in the bag, but you do.
Right. I have no confidence. Absolutely not. I've no, pride in this prediction. My winner.
Well, when this airs, yeah. I think because of Frances's win last year, that was 3 years after 3 billboards. I think it could be Olivia Colman.
She's my second place
for me. Right, I just thought that was an amazing performance, and I like Nicole Kidman. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Like, Olivia Colman knocked me out. So I'm like, well, but then I don't know.
I mean, it could be any of those two or Jessica Chastain even, but I don't
this
really
is going to be fascinating for a listener since the Oscars will have aired like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really? So we're going to sound like idiots? Great. So I'm going to sound so stupid.
When they're listening to us talk about this for 5 minutes, they're like, guys, Penelope Cruz won. Like, hello.
Yeah. Lady Gaga won in a weird write-in.
Lady Gaga,
she staged a
what
coup.
If they announced Lady Gaga's name? Like they said, the winner is Lady Gaga, and then she just like walked out from like the back. Like,
I mean, I'd be thrilled. I'm a fan. I like that performance.
A write-in win. All right, back to Vampire Circus.
Oh,
which
right,
was not nominated for Best Actor. You can tell how passionate we are about this movie. I do have some research on Vampire Circus, which I wanted to share. So the film was written by Judd Kinberg. Good on you, Judd. He was an Emmy nominee for Quincy M.E. as executive producer.
Okay.
So he has some clout there, Cody. And the film was directed by Robert Young. He directed Splitting Hairs with Rick Moranis, and the comedy we all know and love, Fierce Creatures, the follow-up to A Fish Called Wanda, with the same cast.
I have movie? Never heard of this, and that is rare.
Okay, so 1988, right?
Okay.
A Fish Called Wanda.
Yeah.
Academy Award winner for Best Supporting Actor for Kevin Kline. 9 years later, there was a follow-up movie, not a sequel. They played different people, but it was Michael Palin, John Cleese, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline, in a screwball comedy similar in many respects to A Fish Called Wanda, called Fierce Creatures. Came and went. I believe it came out in January of 97.
I don't believe
I saw that movie in a theater because I'm a huge Jamie Lee Curtis fan, and I for a while, like if she was in a movie, I would go see it. I didn't care what it was.
I didn't see this in theaters.
Have you looked it up?
Yes, I'm looking at it now.
Believe that it's real?
I still don't quite believe it, but I guess I have to concede, the evidence in front of me. But there's people who don't believe the earth is round, and that's,
There's a scene in Fierce Creatures where Jamie Lee Curtis is wearing this very tight dress and her breasts are hanging out.
Okay.
And John Cleese is staring at them. And it's like a scene where she's like, she's looking, they're at a zoo and Jamie Lee Curtis is looking at an animal and she's like, oh, so cute. I mean, don't you just want to fondle them? And John Cleese is staring at her breasts and he looks up at her face and he goes like, what? That was the quality of the humor circa early 97.
I mean, I always wear my most cleavage exposing outfits to the zoo, so I can relate.
Jamie Lee, she wears a very tight dress with cleavage to the zoo, hence the humor, hence the January release. I remember reading a story like it's one of those movies where they reshot the last half hour, like they had a whole different ending.
Always bodes well.
And then 6 months later they had to get the cast back together and shoot the ending again. It wasn't just like one scene, it was like a long section of the film. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. Fatal Attraction famously ended differently, and I think as much as I agree with Glenn Close on her intentions behind how it was supposed to end, I do think as a movie, it needs that ending.
I agree with you.
That they shot later, because you just hate her so much. It'd be like at the end of Misery if there wasn't that brutal fight between the two rolling around on the floor and he's stuffing the charred paper in her mouth. Like
by the time it gets to that point, you're like, wow, we are doing this. Here we go. That's a good movie.
Which one?
Misery.
Misery is in, if not my top 10, my top 20. I adore that movie. I love movies about writers, and that is it's one of my favorite Stephen King books. And I thought Rob Reiner, who's of course not known for horror films or thrillers, I just thought he nailed that. Like I just thought, and her performance in that movie is on another level. Like one of the best Oscar wins ever.
Yes, thank you. I love it. And the last time I watched that movie was during a polar vortex. We were snowed in, and I was like, "This is the perfect time to watch it." We did a double feature, that and Fargo, two very snowy movies.
But the ending is just so brilliant. The way he messes with her. He knows she is going to kill him tonight, and he has to. He's like, okay, the only weapon I have left is finishing this novel, and it's just so brilliant. Like the way that it comes together at the end, it's fantastic. Better movie than
I was about to say, speaking of brilliant movies,
I don't think in a year and a half
we keep not talking about the movie.
Okay, we are going to get to the movie.
Talk about better movies.
Anyone interested in Vampire Circus has checked out a long time ago, Cody, so we're good.
All the circus heads,
let's see. So the director Robert Young, his last film came out in 2014. It was called Curse of the Phoenix. It was a horror film.
Okay.
So he was like going back to his roots, because I believe, this was his first movie for Vampire Circus. It's the first film he directed. What a way to start. The Curse of the Phoenix from 2014 was also known as Ghost Ship, which made me think, wait, is that movie Ghost Ship with Margulies?
Yeah.
No, that's something else. That came out in 2002. That's a different movie.
Also bad.
I don't know if I saw that one. It came out when I was in high school, when I saw Everything. So I'm like, how did I miss a horror film when I was in high school? But I don't think I saw Ghost Ship.
I watched that way too young as a child. So
right, you would have been younger.
I was a little young. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the best, right? When you put on a horror film when you're like 6, 7, 8 years old, and you're not supposed to be watching it.
I was way too scared. I didn't do horror movies until I didn't love horror movies until I was like 12 or so. Before then, I
Right.
was
That's about when I
Brady
really,
Cat.
yeah. My dad loves horror films, and he started showing them to me when I was like 8, 9 years old. Like I was watching all the big R-rated horror films by the time I was 10. And so then I was like, oh, I can watch anything. I can handle anything.
Please.
And then occasionally, you know, when you're like 11 and you're seeing some of these really violent films, you're like, wait, what is happening right now? Vampire Circus I did not watch when I was young, but I should have.
No. I don't know about that.
If my dad was really hardcore, was like, okay, we're gonna look at horror films by year. Now we're going to 72, Brian.
Well, Tubi didn't exist yet, so there's no way to watch it.
Isn't it amazing how it's just like anything you want to watch, there's a way to watch it now? That was not the case in the 90s. Like if I wanted to watch a movie, I had to ask my parents to drive me to a video store. If they didn't have it, that was it.
Oh, well.
Like, do you have a copy of this older film? Hollywood Video, 1996. Do you guys have a copy of Vampire Circus? They say the teenager behind, what the hell is that? I can't, that's it. I can't watch it.
He'll say one day, Tubi. Trust me. It'll make sense.
It's like when I went into a Hollywood Video in like 98 and I said, so when are you guys going to get DVDs? And the guy looked at me. He said, we're not going to get DVDs.
Oh.
Go rent your VHS tape.
Hard cut to bankruptcy in 12 years.
That didn't last very long. And then a few years later, VHS is just gone. Except for my LA friend who still has her VHS.
Oh, nice.
Her VCR I visited her a few months ago and we watched. It's like, God, the quality is just terrible. But there is this quality there, but there is this like other quality to it that's very nostalgic and that makes me feel very nice.
Yeah, and certain movies, if the effects aren't very good, look better on VHS because it's not, there's no clarity, so you can't see the wires and the seams.
But yeah, I mean, I'm growing up and watching VHS and that bad quality and having it be pan and scan, and you don't even really realize it till you're older and you go, oh, right. Like this isn't the whole image of the movie. And it's crazy to think how many years we all would just watch stuff like that and just shrug. Okay.
Oh yeah. My family used to purposely buy full screen DVDs when that was a thing because I
remember when they sold those.
Yes.
My said at the top, full frame.
My parents thought that if it wasn't filling the screen, you weren't getting money.
My dad felt that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember they accidentally rented a widescreen VHS of Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis. And I remember walking in and my dad looked very upset. I said, what's wrong? He's like, it's got bars on the top and bottom. I just can't quite get into it. I was like, and I think that was the first time I was like, yeah, why does it have black bars? What's that about? That's weird. Mm-hmm. It's a very wide frame. What's that about?
Now we know. Now we know.
Now it's just they've evolved the TVs. Mm-hmm. Like we don't have to deal with that anymore. So that's cool. Pan and scan. No thanks. All right, some things about the cast in this movie. 3 members of the cast, Lawrence Payne, Adrian Corey, and Lala Ward, went on to appear in Doctor Who. I don't know if they shared like an episode together, but that was kind of cool. Then I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. Do you like Buffy?
I have never seen Buffy. Oh. I'm so sorry.
We've been having some problems with its creator lately. So it's not a show I necessarily go around talking about how great it is.
Sure.
But it was like when I was in college, I discovered it and it was just
that's an unusual vampire story.
Oh yeah.
Unlike Vampire Circus.
It is just a wonderful show, just an amazing ensemble cast. And he wasn't like a lead or anything, but he was in the show a lot. So let's see. Robin Sachs went on to play Ethan Rain in Buffy. He plays kind of a recurring character on that show. And I guess he's in Vampire Circus. I didn't recognize him.
It was a bunch of faces I'd never seen before.
I think he had a very small role. And then David Prowse, who played Darth Vader, appears in a silent role in Vampire Circus as a circus strongman. He also played Frankenstein's monster in 2 other Hammer films of the time.
He's the big guy.
Frankenstein, yeah.
Okay.
Horror of Frankenstein. Wait, is he the guy at the end?
I think he's the big, strong muscle man.
Was he the tall beefcake at the end?
Yeah, who burst through the door.
This movie had so many people in it. I was like, what is happening right now?
Cast of thousands.
Okay, so the beefcake, he's Darth Vader. Okay.
Yes. Well, just the suit.
Yeah, just the suit, exactly. So he played Frankenstein's monster in Horror of Frankenstein and this movie, I think I have to watch and do an episode about Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell.
Oh. Sometimes they call the monster from hell Satan. I think you could have simplified that. Frankenstein, Satan.
Could have shortened the title a little bit.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, some titles around this time, it's like they just go on and on, like there's just no stopping. What was that one I watched last year with Dustin Hoffman? It was like 27 words long. It just kept going. And then like at the beginning of the movie, like it was, the title was so long, it was like scrolling, like end credit.
Oh my God. The poor theater workers putting out the marquee for that.
Putting out the letter. And he's like,
we're Harry Kellerman, and why is he saying those terrible things about me?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. The Harry Kellerman one. I'm like, that poor guy's like, we're out of letter.
Oh my God.
Like, why not just call it Harry Kellerman?
Why not?
Aaron Brockovich that up,
It's me picketing Paramount or whoever.
All right. So the production began on August 9th, 1971. First-time director Young was unfamiliar with Hammer Films' tight production schedule. At one point, he used up some 500 feet of film stock while trying to get a tiger to sink its teeth into a fake human arm stuffed with pork. Finally bit down when beef was substituted.
Okay. Please get the pork away from me. Bring on the beef.
Tiger. Tiger preferred beef, Cody.
I'm with the tiger on that one. I'm kind of a beef guy myself. I can relate. I won't perform unless there's beef.
Okay. So
that's my contract.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see. When filming stretched from the scheduled 6 weeks to 7, oh my God, 7 weeks.
Oh no.
The production was shut down, and the editor, Peter Musgrave, was given strict instructions to make a finished film after the footage that had been shot. Once they entered week 7, they said, we're done. Whatever you have, that's what we're using.
Wow. I mean, I kind of love that. I like the idea of these studios back then. I mean, I think what's his name? The Roger Corman, his method,
right?
Where you get this amount of time, you get some sets we used before, you get this amount of money, go. Yeah. And I think it weirdly forces creativity in a way. I think it forces you to be ingenuitive when you can't get everything you want, so you have to be clever. I'm not saying this movie's clever, but in theory, this kind of filmmaking style leads to, really interesting results.
Yeah, I just read a riveting behind-the-scenes 400-page book about the making of The Godfather, and I was aware of a lot of the problems that they had making the movie. But I mean, like every day on that movie, Coppola thought he was going to be fired. Al Pacino thought he was going to be fired, and this mix of like this great material and script with this just like this intense like terrified feeling like something will go wrong any moment of any day. And there's this they were very strict on like how many days they could shoot and what they could do. They only had this amount of time. I do think that often creates better films rather than just like, just all the time in the world.
Yeah.
We'll take 2 years to shoot this,
Right. I mean,
not to say that Kubrick made bad films. Of course, his films are amazing and he spent a long time. But sometimes it's not the best thing to just shoot forever. No.
Yeah, I mean, like messy productions either yield like masterpieces like Titanic, which isn't messy, but it was over budget and stuff, or it's like it gives you Waterworld. So there's very little in between.
Could you imagine being the director of Waterworld? I just can't even I'm
sure he's not too sad. He's probably a millionaire. So
no, I know. I mean, like the difficulty of the production of that, like shooting on the water with giant sets and big ensemble of like that. I just feel like that would have been a hard film to make.
Yeah, it would be all CGI now.
It'd all be on a tank somewhere. That's what I love about like Jaws and some of these older films where they like Spielberg's like, no, we're shooting on the water. We're not shooting at Universal.
No,
and you feel it every time you watch the movie Jaws. You feel it.
Yeah,
like you're really out there. Like
same with Titanic, which was CGI partially, but it was a big old tank.
Yeah, and they recreated most of the ship and all of that. Like you can tell, like there's like it's like a tangible feeling you have as a viewer. Now, so much of the time, especially like post pandemic, there's like scenes in movies where you can tell like like the actors are not in the same space. Like they're shooting at different places, and I'm noticing that more and more.
Oh yeah, different continents, months apart.
Now I had to do that when I made films in high school and college, and occasionally I couldn't get two actors on the same day, and I would have like an actor film like their side one day, and then a week later, like sometimes I would do that, but it never works as well when they're not in the same room.
Yeah. No.
At least on Vampire Circus, it looks like they were all there at the same time, right?
I can't imagine they weren't. I mean, where else did they have to be?
Yeah, exactly. But 6 weeks, I mean, that even for a smaller, 90-minute film like this, I mean, 6 weeks is fast to shoot a movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some independent films are shot in like 20, 25 days. So I guess,
I
guess 6 weeks isn't that bad, but it's pretty fast for a feature. So let's see a couple more things. Critics like the film today. There is some positive comments about this movie. Someone said one of Hammer Studios' more stylish and intelligent projects. Pop Matters called it one of Hammer's last great classics, saying this is the kind of experiment in terror that reinvigorates your love of the scary movie art form. That seems like kind of high praise.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm not super well versed in Hammer, to be frank, but I don't think they're known for their, abundance of quality. So to say it's the best Hammer film, it's kind of like saying it's, the best
it's been
bagel in Florida. It's like, okay, there's not the stakes are not very high there.
Like I've seen a couple like the classic like Curse of Frankenstein, Horror of Dracula, like some of the like those big titles, but I'd say there's dozens of Hammer titles I've never seen.
The other thing is this isn't scary. Like
the Hammer films are not scary.
No, I mean it's more just kind of terrorizing. I don't know. It's not even terrifying. It's just kind of an onslaught of horror images, and the last like 10 minutes of this movie are just incomprehensible violence. Just like it's just a slaughterhouse, and
you weren't scared by this movie?
No,
you weren't like shaking like with the popcorn, like you couldn't quite get the popcorn.
No, I was okay. Actually, I slept soundly after Vampire Circus. Believe it or not,
you weren't there with the covers pulled up like this, like
with garlic in my hands. Yeah, no.
He's coming in. He's gonna kill me. But so at the time, the reviews were not as kind. Let's see. The New York Times gave the film a 2-sentence review in a review that was mostly about another vampire film at the time, Countess Dracula. They said in their long review about a different movie, they said, wise horror fans will skip Vampire Circus and settle for Countess Dracula on the new double bill at the Forum. Both are Hammer productions, but the first was dealt a quick, careless anvil. I don't know what anvil means.
So he's calling us stupid because we watched this. Wow. These
50 years on, we have no excuse.
The media. Yeah.
The only excuse to watch this now is to be doing a podcast called Film at 50 and to have it be weekly. You're going to hit some points in the year where there's not a Godfather Cabaret every month.
True. That's true.
April is very quiet. And you know how many Fridays there are in April, Cody, this year?
A lot. 5. 5, but only one of them is Good Friday. So
only one of them is Good Friday.
One of them was good. Yeah.
And only one of the episodes is with you.
The best Friday. Thank you.
The best Friday of April.
Or Freaky Friday, whatever you want to call it.
Freaky Friday. Speaking of Jamie Lee. Let's see. So the last thing here is an updated novelization of the film was written by Mark Morris, published in 2012. So in 2011-ish, probably, someone said, we know what we need. You know what the world needs right now? An updated novelization of Vampire Circus.
Well, that's in the middle of Twilight Mania.
Oh, right.
Or I guess the tail end of it. So I wonder if
Twilight Mania,
we're looking for other, vampire material to update and refresh.
Right. Like,
honestly,
so Twilight came out at the end of 2008. And the last film came out in 2012, I want to say.
I think so. Yeah. So it was right around
that period.
But that last movie was huge. So
which is a period where I wrote a vampire novel and I sent it out to agents and they were all like, yeah, no, we're saturated with vampire. Back in the day when I thought, if I just chase the market, maybe like this could be my ticket. I'm like, oh no.
Sometimes it is. You never know.
I like that book. Maybe one day it'll find a home. Let's see. So that's all the trivia I have on the movie. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? Anything else you found?
Not much else. I thought it was funny that the town was called Stettel, which is just
Stettel.
Shtetl, which is a name for like a village. That's just like calling your town. It's like I live in city. It's just they didn't really think too hard about that one.
Yeah, we've been with my students. I've been reading a book about the Holocaust, and they call it a shtetl like throughout the book.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Ooh, I like this word."
Mm-hmm. and so did the makers of Vampire Circus.
Vampire Circus,
the same thing.
Thank you, makers of Vampire Circus. So yeah, so just in general, like, did we just hate on this movie the whole time, Cody, or did you find some things you liked about it?
I didn't hate this movie entirely. It's not even the worst film from 1972 that I've ever seen.
What's the worst film?
Man of La Mancha.
Oh, I'm not doing that because I saw that musical when I was young and I hated every second of it. So when I saw that there was a movie version of 72, and I really struggled in Fiddler on the Roof, which was like the big musical of 71.
I like Fiddler on the Roof.
Do you like Fiddler on the Roof?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my guest liked
musicals.
it too. No, I love musicals. It was very long.
Yeah, that's a long one. Well, so is Man of La Mancha, and nobody in it can sing, so definitely not worth checking out. Vampire Circus is better than Man of La Mancha. I can say that definitively, but not by much.
What's so bad about Man of La Mancha?
Oh my god, nobody can sing. It's really boring. It's Peter O'Toole and Sophia Loren are the leads.
How could that be bad?
Because they're bad in it. They're bad at their jobs.
Peter O'Toole?
Yeah, he can't sing. He's great. He's a good actor. Yeah, but not a good Man of La Mancha.
Sophia Loren and Peter O'Toole. That is a screen couple I never would have thought of. That's interesting.
And James Coco. Not
James Coco.
Right.
Did that get Oscar nominations? Man of La Mancha?
I think it did. I think it got one
like
of those,
a couple
like, adaptation score. Well, I mean, like this is a big year for musicals with Cabaret and 1776.
Cabaret.
If you count Lady Sings the Blues as a musical, kind of.
Yeah, 1776 is on the bubble of maybe I'll do that one, but I don't know.
Like that one.
Is that good?
Yeah, well, I like it, even though every song is like, we need the Declaration. Like, it's not, I wouldn't call it the most sparkling source material, but I weirdly enjoy that movie.
Okay, well, if you wanted to come back and talk about it, I'll do that.
Only if I can sing the entire time.
We sing the whole podcast episode?
It'll be a hit. But anyway, Vampire Circus. I didn't hate it. I thought it was a kind of like perverse fun time in a way. But when it's not being kind of crazy out there, it's kind of boring.
It's got that dull like Hammer era, like where people in rooms are talking, and it's like, this is supposed to be a goofy horror film. Why are we spending 10 minutes just like talking about stuff?
It was fun pointing out like the inaccurate costumes and art direction. Like my boyfriend pointed out one of the houses has straight up drywall, which I don't think was around in 16 whatever when the
what did it say? 1845?
I don't remember. I couldn't tell you.
1825.
Yeah. They're all wearing
I would not have guessed it was
costumes.
That. It didn't feel that old of a time period. Like, it didn't feel 1825. It felt like 1920. It felt like early 20th century.
Sure. Depression. Yeah.
Like maybe late 1800s. I don't know.
But yeah, it was. I enjoyed watching it. Like I said, I think the ending is just incomprehensible. I can't say I was paying the most attention by the time there was just a blood fest. But I was watching.
That's when it got fun.
Yeah, true. I was watching with my boyfriend, and he pointed out romantic,
very romantic
anniversary
movie.
Yeah, but he had a kind of read on the movie that was, I thought he found like a profound way of looking at it. So I can't credit myself with this thought, but his interpretation of it was, this also takes place during a plague, and this village is secluded by force. If anybody tries to leave it, there's a battalion around the town that will shoot at them to keep the plague in. And there's one point where the like hero son, I don't remember the character's name, says something about, I don't even remember exactly, but to paraphrase, he basically says, we're so afeared of death, and these performers are looking it in the face and like bringing something to our lives that's not just death. And so I think it was kind of like his interpretation of it was a kind of about the profundity of legacy through art, if you want to call it, like traveling circus art. I don't think it quite stands up the entire movie. Like I said, the ending is just a nonsense. But for a moment there, I was like, okay, I can get on this wavelength, even if that's an accident.
Yeah, I like parts of it. I like the scenes of like creative like violence, and I love the some of the production design. And I'm a big fan of like circus scenes in horror films is kind of like a thing. So I really responded to that.
Carnivals.
Yeah. So I liked that about it. I mean, my biggest problem with the movie was that I didn't care about any of the characters. I needed like a protagonist. I needed someone to follow and root for. And there's not. It's just like this big ensemble of people. And I'm like, okay, so this vampire wants to come back and they have to do all this work to bring him back. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So the story just kind of lets you down just on that level. Like it's just like a very rudimentary thing that I look for in any movie I watch. Like, can I root for someone? Is there someone's story that I care about? Even in a cheesy horror movie, like I need someone to kind of follow, and you don't really have that here.
Right, because the like concept of them being stuck there because of the plague is interesting. I don't know if the movie does much with it. It kind of just is an establishing circumstance for these characters, but that's kind of a take on this time period that I feel like I haven't seen a lot of movies explore. So there's something there.
And I mean, I appreciated that it did have strong violence and gore and nudity, and it wasn't just like playing it super safe on that level. Like I felt like the opening was pretty strong, attacking that count, and like just like the way that he kept disposing of these people. I was like, it grabbed my attention. I was like kind of settling in for kind of a quiet, low budget Hammer movie, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is not just they're not messing around here. Like there's some stuff happening early on.
There's something there.
So there's some moments. I my first short story I ever wrote was about a horror story set in a fun house. So whenever I see that in a movie, I'm always like, oh, there it is. I love it. So I like that. I like that scene. Like those two young boys were like staring into the mirror. Then they turn around and they see the vampire, and then they're disposed of, and it's like horrifying. I mean, there's some moments that I thought worked well. I wouldn't say this is just like a completely like a throwaway movie by any means, but yeah, it's pretty mediocre.
Yeah, I also liked the mirror scene because the way it's a tent and it says the mirror of life, and they invite the town leader, the Burgermeister, in to look into the mirror of life, and it's just funhouse mirrors, and he's having a great time.
Oh, the older guy who's like giggling, like looking
laughing
at himself.
It was
having a grand old time.
Endearing moment in the movie. I was like, I kind of would probably do the same thing if I'd never looked in the funhouse mirror. I'd be just giggling my little head off.
I was like, that is something that has not changed in 200 years. Like, true. I go into a funhouse mirror maze like that, unless it's like It Chapter 2 and there's Pennywise down the. Then I maybe
you gotta watch out for that.
Maybe I'll leave.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that scene though is that one of the things of vampire lore is they can't be seen in mirrors. So to have them be
like, that's how they're discovered
in mirrors, and that's how they kind of transport themselves around, is a really interesting twist on that little part of vampire.
Yeah, that's kind of a twist. Don't they first see them in the mirror and then they turn around and then they're like actually behind them, and then they look in the mirror and then they're not in the mirror?
I can't promise clarity. I can't tell you exactly what was happening at that point.
It was like they were transferring themselves into reality there,
which I thought was interesting. Like, That's something I hadn't seen. In that sense, it was an unusual vampire story. Everything else, normal.
Let's see. I responded to the hysteria in the opening. They're like, kill the count. And it reminded me of the hysteria at the end of Frankenstein from 31, like where they're like the whole the whole town, kind of like at the end of Beauty and the Beast, when they're going up there, like, kill the beast. So it had some of that going.
In a castle.
Good mob, and I liked for a low budget Hammer film. I thought the costume design, production design was pretty solid. It wasn't like I wasn't being taken out of the movie every scene with like, oh, that looks kind of rough. Like that, I thought worked pretty well.
I mean, you could tell they kind of just borrowed the costumes from a local production of Oliver. It wasn't, wasn't incredible.
I thought that it wasn't incredible.
Cool, though. I like the
I thought it looked okay. The
look of the
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the shooting of the animals. That scene was unpleasant.
Oh yeah, well, but I did like the animals. Let's talk about them.
What did you like about the animal?
Everything about them. Big cats,
tiger.
Panthers. Hello, yeah. One of my goals in life is to hug the head of a tiger. That's what I really want to do.
Without your head being pulled up.
I mean, I can't make any promises, but so whenever a tiger's on screen, I'm like, want to hug that head. And this tiger was no different.
Did you feel that way watching Life of Pi?
Yes.
I saw Life of Pi twice. That scene where like it looks like they're not going to make it, and the tiger is wet and it's like curling up against the protagonist. I just like bawl my eyes out like in no other movie ever made.
That's a good movie. Come back to us, Ang Lee.
Yeah, that movie. I don't know what it is about that scene. It's like, oh my god.
Well, because you raise tigers, right? So
no, I'm just like because you really like feel that bond between those two by the end of that movie and that scene. I'm just like, oh my gosh, because it's like such an intimidating presence for so much of that film, and then you're like, oh, it is sweet. It's sweet.
It's so good. Good tiger.
Let's see. So yeah, I felt like the film didn't have a lot of forward momentum. I never felt a true sense of danger or menace. Like it just felt kind of like the action scenes. This was like, okay, this is on page 92 of the script. We got to have a fight scene here. There was never that sense of menace, which I did feel in another movie I had mixed feelings on, a vampire film we talked about in October called Daughters of Darkness. I don't know if you've heard of that film. It's got some like kind of it's got two female vampires who kind of they live at this hotel and they prey on all the visitors to the hotel, and it's got some kind of more of a sensual quality to it. It's kind of a cool movie in that regard. But that movie had a lot of menace, and you could feel like when the women are preying on this couple that have arrived at the hotel, like you feel it in every scene, even when they're talking. You're like, oh, there's something behind the lines here. Like something bad's gonna happen, and you don't really feel that in this. This is more of just kind of, let's just throw like action scenes at the wall here and there, and it's just
I'd say it's more goofy than anything.
Yeah, and as I said, there's not really anyone to root for. I did like the playfulness at times with the special effects and some of the, I mean, as cheesy as it was, I mean, there was like a weird transition where they like knock down a wall, and it's clearly like a weird like visual effect where they've done something to the image. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of creative for 72. I like that.
Trying something. There was one shot I did like where there's a circus performer who has the ability to transform into a panther. And there's one part where he, as a human, is running up the stairs and the camera focuses on his feet. Okay. And really quickly it transitions to be panther paws.
Oh, like in a quick cut.
Yeah, it was pretty seamless. I was cool. I rewound it twice because I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, that's a good example. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has some creative transitions and things, and like it feels like a first-time director. It feels like a guy just kind of like trying to find his way, and who wanted more time and didn't get it. And I'm curious to know, like, what were they shooting that 7th week that they didn't get to? Right, because it feels like a complete film. Like, you think the ending is way too just rushed, and
I think the ending is a flop.
Do you think the ending they needed like another few days of shooting?
The ending feels to me like, how do we end this? Oh, they all die. It just feels like when you're like a kid and you're playing a game and you run out of time and you go, and we all died. Like, just we're done.
Yes. I have a creative writing club at school, and I've had a few students end the story that way. And they said, why'd you end it that way? And like, oh, I ran out of time.
Exactly. I truly think that's what happened here. I'm not saying like an additional time would have turned this into a masterpiece, but I think there was some room there for improvement.
Yeah, it's either and they all died, or and then she woke up.
Oh no, not that one.
It's amazing to me how much violence are in my students' stories. They really like death and murder.
Teenagers, Yeah.
Like, okay.
Been there before.
And I've like had talks like more than once. I'm like, so you don't have to have violence and death for a story to be interesting. And they're like, shut up.
I don't believe you. Yeah.
And then I'm like, from the horror guy who prefers Fatal Attraction and Misery ending the way they do with the violence. I'm like, no, come on. Let's it's like I just watched Pig with Nicolas Cage.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. A good movie.
And I didn't really know anything about it. Like, I knew like he has like a pet pig and the pig gets kidnapped or something. Yes, that's all I knew. So I went into it having watched some of his other recent films. I thought it was going to be a revenge movie where he's like killing people.
Oh, no.
And that's not what it is at all. And I'm like, oh, this is like a quiet kind of introspective movie. And he's not playing that kind of character here. And I was like, I really loved that about it. I was like, oh, okay, it's not what I thought it was going to be. This is fantastic. Yeah.
And the pig was really cute.
Pig was cute. And just like the devastating reveal of what happens at the end. I'm just like, oh my God, this is not, I love that. I love when I put on something thinking it's one thing. It's like Promising Young Woman could have been that. It could have just been like a revenge movie where people are dying all the way through. It could have been that kind of a thriller. And because it's
started.
not,
I don't like that movie at all.
Oh, you don't like that movie?
No.
Oh, I like that one. I mean, talk about a movie with surprises. Did you like Pig?
I liked Pig. Yes.
Okay.
I liked Pig more than
yeah. And I love Portland, Oregon, and to see like the way that city was used in the movie. I just really responded to it.
I was predicting Cage till the very end for Best Actor, for no other reason.
Oh, right. I responded to that. I responded that as what did I say? Like,
I think he sent me a snarky little GIF. Yeah.
You thought so I was the crazy one predicting Kristen Stewart till the end, even though she missed out on BAFTA, missed out on SAG. I just felt like I watched that performance. I said that is getting in. I just think that's going to happen. Right.
So congrats.
Well, I'm not to say, but I mean that was a pretty bold prediction because I think it's very well possible. It could have been Cruise, Gaga, Kidman, and that would have been it. I think that was the more likely lineup there. But what Cage got Critics' Choice? Is that right?
Yes.
And then did he get anything else?
No.
Okay, so why were you predicting that he would get an Oscar nomination? Because of his history with the Oscars?
It was that
it's such a small film.
It was, but the fact they got Critics' Choice and some critical attention, I mean, that's more than like Penelope Cruz could say. She didn't even get Critics' Choice, or Judi Dench. But I kind of played safe with my predictions generally. So I always want to take like one or two big swings, just in case they happen. Even if I don't really, in the back of my mind knew it'd probably be Javier Bardem, but if it was Nicolas Cage, then I get to be that guy who says I was right.
You're right about there was that confusion about the fifth slot for actor. It wasn't very clear. Like I think Bardem seemed to be the biggest slam dunk. I was going with DiCaprio over. I thought Don't Look Up had enough love behind it, and he's been nominated for everything in the last 8-9 years. And I just thought he's real. I thought I had problems with Don't Look Up. I thought DiCaprio was great, and he's in most of the movie. I was like, well, that would make sense that he would get the fifth slot.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, I think when Bardem's name was called, it was like, of course, like, that makes total sense. Like,
I really struggled with that movie, so I'm just like, okay.
Did
you like it?
I'm the little freak who kind of liked it, but I
might watch it one more time.
I like Aaron Sorkin's scripts. I think it's fun to listen to dialogue. That's
really, I typically do too. But like his movie last year, The Trial of Chicago 7. I was just like, and then I watched Being in the Car. I'm like, I just couldn't ever. I was like watching it. It felt like I'm like, this should be like an 8-episode, like a limited series on FX or something. It didn't really feel like Ryan a movie. It just felt kind of like a shortened show. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Nicole's pretty great in it though.
Yeah, I love Nicole Kidman. I mean, I marvel at her work ethic every year. Like she is in 3 projects every year, pretty much.
Oh yeah, TV.
I mean, she is just like
film.
She is a workaholic, and she's just always taking chances. And some things land, some don't. But I loved her in that HBO series, The Undoing, and she's just always just on the top of her game. So I will not be sad. I didn't love her performance in that, but if she Nicole Kidman is one of those actors, she should have 2 Academy Awards.
Exactly. I think that's
been 20 years.
What's going to happen? Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll those of you listening now, exactly. You will know what will have happened.
We'll sound so smart.
I think you're right. I think that's the most likely. That's what will probably happen. But we'll see. Because I think that's the only one that could, like, J.K. Simmons won't win. Bardem won't win.
No way.
The one win category. The one big category that Ricardo's could win is actress. So that kind of makes sense. Liked it, so they liked it. Really. That's the place they could reward it. We're recording this before SAG, so we don't know who's going to win that. I keep hearing that Jessica Chastain will win SAG, but I'm not quite on.
I don't know. If she wins SAG, then I'll take her Oscar chances seriously. But until then, I'm like, I hope Gaga wins SAG and BAFTA just for the chaos.
Yeah, that was wild. That was really wild. That she was the only one to get in at BAFTA of who had been in the conversation in the other award shows, and then she's left off. How did that happen?
It's wild.
Very strange.
Wild. Yeah. Well, they hated the movie.
Everyone just says they hated the movie.
Yeah, that's all it was. I mean,
that's all it was.
They just didn't like it.
Interesting. So interesting. Poor fun. Ridley Scott, man. What does Ridley Scott have to do? Makes 2 giant movies. One gets one lone Razzie nom for Ben Affleck, and the other one gets best makeup.
I think all the time about he must have so much regret about not being a producer for Gladiator, because he still doesn't technically have an Oscar, even though he directed a Best Picture winner.
Yeah, no, he is not. He has been nominated for so many things, and his movies get nominated for picture, and Gladiator won. Yeah, I think that could have been his win if he had just been a producer of that movie. Absolutely. Then we would have called him.
And then, yeah.
But yeah, so Vampire Circus. Anything else you wanted to mention? I've kind of gone through all of my notes here. I think I've mentioned everything. I like the ending more than you did.
Okay.
Because I wrote nice things about the ending. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is fun. And you're like,
I liked the acrobats that turned into bats. Acrobats. That was fun.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if okay, so towards the end of the movie, they figure out all of a sudden that crosses are repellents to the vampires.
Giant, big
so there's a giant cross in a church that they use. And the last cross, I'm using quotation marks here, that they use is a crossbow that is in like the accidental shape of kind of a cross. It was more of a plus sign, and that apparently saves the day. I don't know if I quite buy that in the logic of the movie, but okay. I guess they just had to wrap it up that day.
Did you see what this movie was rated? Did you see what the rating is for this movie?
Was it X?
PG.
No. Oh, okay. Bring the kids.
I've talked about this before on the podcast. What is this crazy thing of like the early 70s? So many movies getting PG ratings and they have violence and nudity. It's just a weird
sure
time.
Jaws is PG.
Jaws is PG.
Yeah, I mean,
there are full-on breasts.
Like,
there are full-on breasts. What, 3 or 4 times in Vampire Circus?
Yeah.
Like you can't show breasts today and get a PG.
No, you can't
even get a PG-13.
No, I think movies where the rating system was like, I mean, it literally is parental guidance. Like the parents can make the decision to see this or not.
Such a
Nowadays,
weird
I feel
time.
like PG is like the base.
What was the other one we talked about a few months ago? Panic in Needle Park with Al Pacino was rated PG, and it had nudity, it had drugs, it had violence.
It's educational.
I'm like, so if you're a teacher and you have your students sign off on you can watch anything up to PG-13, like you could show your students Panic in Needle Park and Vampire Circus.
I remember even into the 80s. I remember watching Airplane when I was a kid, and there's a topless woman in that.
Oh, right, there is that topless, and that's PG. Yeah,
I was shocked at 11 years old.
So I don't know when that changed. It was like when they created the PG-13 rating. Yes. Then it was like any nudity had to be PG-13. And then I feel like it was in the 90s where it was like pushed into R. Like no,
right, because
that's the R.
Even Titanic with Kate Winslet in the drawing scene, they had to like fight for that PG-13.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, like how much, because that movie doesn't it have an F-bomb and it has a middle finger in it, and
it has one F by a character in the present day, one of the scientists.
Oh right, yeah, when he's like, excuse me, his hand, if it's
right, his hand, yeah.
And then she flips off. Is it Cal? Who does she flip? Oh yeah, Lovejoy. And then we get her breasts for a few seconds in that scene.
I think the key is that you don't see both at the same time.
Oh, okay. They only show one breast at a time.
Right. Weirdly, that was
the camera like weirdly pans around, like so you only see one breast.
And it's artistic. It's not sexualized.
It's not a sexual scene. Exactly.
Right. But I wonder how much money would have been lost if that got an R-rated. If they got rated R. So.
I need to research that. I've always wondered, like, was the movie rated R at any point and they had to go back and fight? It from the beginning was PG-13.
They may have gone back to fight at the beginning, but I don't think there was ever a moment where it was.
There had to be a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
$200 million plus movie. It had to be a lot of pressure to get that PG-13.
Yeah.
I don't think that ever would have come out as an R-rated movie. I think they would have had to.
They would have
trimmed something. Yeah, they would have trimmed something. But yeah.
movie.
Titanic, celebrating its was it 25th?
It was 97, so 25th. Yep.
25th anniversary this year.
Wow,
man, maybe I'll do a bonus episode on that at the end of the year.
I've been on several podcasts about Titanic. I love that movie so much. I think I watched it 3 times during quarantine. So
that's one of my favorite films. I would love to talk about that later this year. It'd be fun. So let's see. Anything else about the movie? Did you think about like what would this movie look like today if someone made Vampire Circus in 2022? Like how would it be similar? How would it be different?
So actually, there was a movie I watched at Sundance last year called 8 for Silver, which is coming out now, and it's been retitled The Cursed. and it's
The Cursed. Oh, I saw
yes.
someone just tweeted about that yesterday. Said really bad horror film dropping this weekend. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A better one is also dropping this weekend called The Cursed.
Sure. I didn't love it. Yes, okay. I didn't love it, but it's similar. It kind of, I think to your point, I think it is what this type of movie would look like if made today. It's kind of low budget, but it still has like some moments of like filmmaking finesse, especially in the cinematography. But it's similarly, you know, monster heavy and gory, and it's set in the past in a little village. So I think that's probably the closest proxy to this kind of movie
cool.
today.
Was that your divine double feature pick, or was that just
no?
Oh, okay.
I got some other ones. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would like to see that circus vibe like being taken more seriously, and like I feel like it's just a part of this movie, and I would like it to be more of the focus, and I would like there to be a protagonist that we could really get behind. It doesn't have to be, it could be like a younger character or just someone to kind of follow through the story. I think would help the movie a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you anybody's name.
Like it's just like an ensemble it's just like, okay, it's like we need somebody's like to see that, like someone's eyes to see the story through. I think would have helped. I mean, I would give it 2 out of 4. I wouldn't give it, what are you gonna give it, like 1?
I gave it a 4 out of 10. So if we're going by 4s,
so like 1.5 to 2,
a light 2.
Okay, yeah, it's like a light 2. It's not, it's like I've watched many films for this podcast. I had a much worse time.
Oh, I've seen worse films in my life. Absolutely.
Like mostly like the slow dramas, a few of them. It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, the austere kind of Oscar-y.
But so far, the episodes have been pretty solid for 72. 72 started really strong with Cabaret and Godfather, of course, but also What's Up, Doc and Solaris and some of these just like really like famous films from the period.
No, I'm looking over my list now. It's a good year for movies. There's only like 3 I would call bad, and this is one of them, unfortunately.
What are some other favorites from that year that you've seen and you enjoyed?
I mean, Godfather and Cabaret, of course, are masterpieces.
You like The Godfather? You think it's a good movie?
I do like this movie called The Godfather.
Are there people who don't like The Godfather?
Not my friends. I think Sleuth is good. That's a good movie.
Oh,
that's a fun little two-hander. Heartbreak Kid is a great Elaine May, Neil Simon movie. It's really funny. I love The Emigrants.
I've had 2 guests talk about that, including Izzy from Be Kind Rewind, saying it's really rough. So you like it?
I like it, and I like the sequel, The New Land, I think it's called.
Oh, there's a sequel to The Emigrants? Yes. The Emigrants is interesting because it got a Best Foreign Film nomination for 71, and then it came out in the US in 72. So then I got a picture nomination for 72.
Yeah, and in that year, the same year that it was nominated for Best Picture, the sequel got a foreign language film nomination. So,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, because I mean, my strict rule is if it gets a picture nomination, we do an episode about it. And that's let me down a few times. But I'm like, oh, why am I watching this? Nicholas and Alexander for me was a tough watch. Amazing ending. Like the last scene is incredible. I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's amazing. But it's 3 hours long, and it's a slog of like a costume drama. And that's I can guess not how it ends, genre.
Knowing the Russian royal family.
Exactly.
Not well.
But not well. I mean, it's a horrifying final 3 minutes. But like costume dramas, like historical costume dramas, that is not my cup of tea.
They can be rough.
And if it's just 2 people in rooms talking for 2 hours, I'm like,
yeah, that's like me with like A Man for All Seasons. I'm like, come on, guys.
Now, like Titanic is kind of a costume drama, epic historical film, but that movie just moves along. It's just so interesting all the way through. So I mean, they can play around with the genre, but when it's that kind of like that stuffy kind of costume drama, I'm out.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
No, we need to add some horror in it, have some vampire violence or something. All right, so that takes us to our final 2 segments. The first one's the Divine Double Feature, where we pick a modern film to pair this with. So what are we going with for Vampire Circus? What's something maybe better you could throw at the viewer?
Okay, so I think I did this last time I was on. I have 2 options. I think I went above and beyond. The first movie that I thought of really almost immediately with this movie was it came out this past year, Benedetta by Paul Verhoeven.
Okay. I don't know that one.
I love it. I love Paul Verhoeven so much.
Paul Verhoeven is great. Yeah.
He's great. Benedetta is a movie about a nun who starts having visions of Jesus, and starts kind of putting herself in positions of power, and she's a lesbian.
Now we're talking.
It also has to do with plague, and the thing about the movie Vendetta is at one point they similarly lock themselves down, much like the village in this movie, but in reverse, where they're being forced to lock down. And it also has macabre and supernatural elements, and it has religious themes, much like this one does with the crosses at the end. So that comparison really jumped out to me really obviously, and it's a much better movie than this. My second option is a movie that I will always champion. I think it's extremely underrated and hated for all the wrong reasons, but I think it's genuinely a masterpiece, which is M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. I've been on several podcasts making my case about The Village. I love that movie so much. And it's, again, an isolated village, much like the one in Vampire Circus. Wow, I forgot the name of the movie.
I think I looked up your top 10 this week, and didn't you have Old on your top 10? Was that you?
I sure did.
Yeah, I loved Old, and it was just completely decimated. And I feel like months later, everyone's like, oh yeah, that was like, I thought Old was his best movie in a long while. It kind of at the end, it's like it doesn't quite but like I'd say the first 70-80% of that movie I thought was really, it was an intriguing idea, and I thought he handled it well, and it was just like a long Twilight Zone, great actors, and I'm like, what? Like I saw it opening day, not really knowing much about it, and I really enjoyed it, and I don't know why it got so much hate. I was happy to see that on your top.
I mean, it's the thing that M. Night Shyamalan always has, which is like a weird sense of like kind of an askew perspective. There's always awkward dialogue and sometimes like accidental, but maybe on purpose, moments of humor. And Old has all that, but also it has this amazing like metaphor for aging, for the human, life cycle, played out in miniature in a way that I was really shockingly moved by. The Village similarly is a really like kind of always timely metaphor about power and how it can corrupt, and especially old white guys in charge thinking they know best can always usually lead to destruction. And again, like Vampire Circus, it's an isolated village. They're isolated of their own accord though, and they're also being hunted and menaced by mysterious creatures on the outskirts of their town. It's also gorgeously shot. Roger Deakins has an amazing Oscar nominated score by James Newton Howard. I recommend The Village any chance I can. I watch it every fall. I love this movie.
You watch The Village once a year? Oh, okay. Like a specific week of the year you get into that. I'm feeling autumn vibe.
Autumnal. Yeah, it's a very like, it's a movie full of like browns and oranges. Very autumn.
That's not one of my favorite films of his, but it's certainly. Say. Well, it was tough because he was going. He had a run there of 3 just really strong films, and I remember watching The Village, crowded theater, and when you start to realize it's most of the movie works pretty well. It's just that ending really just sat wrong with me at the time, and I haven't had the desire to revisit it since, even though I probably should. It's been a while.
It actually works better knowing like the twist,
knowing the end
marks, right? Because then you can see like where it's going towards, and you can understand what the movie is kind of going for. And like you can say a movie needs to present all of its intentions well on the first viewing, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with it. I think like The Sixth Sense is a really good example of a movie with a twist that you want to go back and watch it again, but like you're not taken aback by the twist. Whereas The Village, I think a lot of people went, wait, what's going on? And didn't bother to see it again because they didn't like it. Whereas I think with repeat viewings, it is better.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's time. It's, what was that, 18 years ago that came out? Like it's time for I haven't seen it since opening weekend. Like I think I need to revisit that one. I think I might appreciate it more. Because I think I was thinking about rewatching it again, and then I saw Lady in the Water 2 years later.
Oh my god!
And The Happening, and I'm like, ugh. And horrible. I kind of like, I moved away from it for a while.
So did all of America. So you're not alone in that.
After Earth, I remember when the Visits, is that what it's called? The Visit. I remember when that came out. That was exciting because it was like, oh, he's going back to his roost and gonna do like a small horror film there.
Stripped
and so
down.
I've been much more of a fan of his work of the last few years. Like he's doing some cool stuff there.
Yeah, his like kind of third act he's in now is actually, I think, exciting, and I'm gonna keep watching his movies until he stops making
like
them.
I don't know if he'll ever get another Oscar nomination for director again. Like even I just feel like that the genre that he deals in, I think The Sixth Sense was kind of like that it transcended it, and it was just it was like a popular movie.
It was a beautiful fluke. I love that movie. But yeah, I think that was his one and done with the Academy.
Yeah. Those are great choices. I went with something I just watched last week just because it was fresh in my mind and has a circus vibe to it, and it's brand new. So I went with Nightmare Alley, which I thought about
watched. That. Yeah, I thought about it.
I try to, unless there's one that really just pops out, I try to go with something as new as possible so you can really see like the evolution of film over 50 years, which is kind of like the thesis of this podcast. And I thought it would be really neat to watch like how has film changed, how have some elements stayed the same. I'm looking at this kind of small, low budget Hammer film 50 years on to look at like this giant, like not giant, but like a pretty big budget movie by Del Toro and with a big cast with Bradley Cooper and Cate Blanchett. Did you like Nightmare Alley?
I really did, and I like the original better. I think the original's better, but not by much.
I need to watch the original. Yeah. Is it pretty similar to the original?
It's the exact same story. It just has a little bit more. It doesn't show as much because of the time period it was made in, obviously, and it's much shorter. It's like an hour shorter.
Oh, okay.
The exact same story.
I was mixed on it. I like it's definitely better than Vampire Circus, but I think the movie would have been helped by a shorter running time. I think you do feel the length in the new Nightmare Alley that you don't feel in some other longer movies. Like I could kind of feel like it's okay, but it's like the cast is so great, especially Blanchett. Like she is on Cate another level.
Amazing, and it's so good.
And I was like, all throughout award season, not having seen this, I'm like, why is Cate Blanchett getting nominated for this Nightmare Alley movie?
And
like,
then you see it.
And then I watched it and I went, oh, that's why.
Yeah,
that scene where she reveals, like, oh my gosh, I was just like taken with her in her last scene at the end where she's won't give it away, but
yeah,
boy.
I mean the whole movie looks amazing. I'm also not a huge fan of Del Toro. I don't really love Pan's Labyrinth or Shape of Water or any of the other ones he's most famous for, which I know is controversial. I'm aware.
No, I don't care about Shape. I like Shape of Water, but I think Pan's Labyrinth is a beautiful movie. One of the best films of that year.
It's pretty. I'll give it that. But she's a pretty girl. But yeah, so by default, Nightmare Alley is my favorite Del Toro, which I feel like is controversial. But now that I got the picture nomination, I feel less bad saying that.
That was the big shock nomination, I think, in picture.
Absolutely.
Was anyone predicting that it would get picture?
It was like my number 16 prediction, probably. It was pretty far down there behind like Ricardo's, Gucci, Tick Tick Boom.
Like it's hard because I'm doing this YouTube channel now where I like I'm doing some prediction videos, and it's like, well, that prediction's there forever. When I'm like, okay, there's really only 2 other films that could be included here.
And what'd you say?
And the title, Being the Ricardos, and what was the other one?
Tick Tick Boom.
Oh, it might have been Lost Daughter.
Lost Daughter. Yeah.
And I did not even occur to me that Nightmare Alley could get in a picture. Nope. It didn't even occur to me.
No, I think it was one of those things because the Academy had to list 10 nominees, and you always see those like honest Oscar interviews that are always really depressing around this time period, and pretty often in the expanded era, there's somebody who says like, or a lot of people who say, I just couldn't think of 10 movies, which is depressing. So I think
the modern Academy member, and they're like, wait, exactly. I have to list. So wait, so to get the 10 nominations for Best Picture, they write down or type in their titles?
I'm not great with the rules. I'm pretty sure they had to list 10 movies, and it wasn't even a matter. Yes, I wish like I knew more about this.
Or did they actually have to like type it in? I'd be curious.
I think they had to pull it out of their little heads. So
some Academy members
about that. So
they get to number 9, number 10. They're tired of typing, and they're like F9.
Yeah, exactly. No, honestly, I mean,
it's short.
It's depressing because every year it's like, how could you not think of more than 8 movies? But I mean, I liked Nightmare Alley, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, so that was a cool inclusion there, and sad that Blanchett didn't make it in for supporting actress. But I'm much more upset that Ruth Negga did not get in, because I thought that was a spectacular performance. And agree. For a movie that I think it could get kind of lost being on a streamer like Netflix, like it might 10 years from now. Sometimes I think that one giant, like one major Oscar nomination can help a movie like that.
For sure.
To keep it alive a little bit in everyone's minds. And so that was sad to me too. But yeah, Blanche is really great. I love seeing, like, I didn't realize how big that ensemble was. Really, a lot of great actors in that film. Richard Jenkins is really fantastic in that movie. And yeah, I'm a big Del Toro fan, and I was happy to see him. It felt kind of different from some of his other films, and kind of quieter, and I liked that about it. So yeah, I would
monsters.
There was, usually we get a monster at some point. So it's just in the human beings in the movie in this one.
The thing about Nightmare Alley is it's so clearly a follow up to a Best Picture winner. So
he 4 years on.
He had unlimited resources. It seemed like, I'm pretty sure it was the most expensive movie Searchlight has ever produced.
Oh man, and they must have lost a lot of money on it then. I mean, that did not
sure
perform. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like it didn't make a lot of money, but it got a Best Picture nomination. So like, do you call that a success or not? I don't really know.
That's been another weird thing about the pandemic, is that so many of these big movies keep bombing, and then Spider-Man makes like $3 billion. So it's like, well, okay, so people will go. It just has to be the right film.
I've had so many rants about this.
I'm sure you get into it. We can talk about that later.
West Side Story making $30 million.
How much is West Side Story made to date in theaters?
It
30 million.
Crossed 40 domestic.
It hasn't crossed 40 million. That movie was so great. I took my mom to it, and we just had a blast in that movie.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I feel like if that had come out in 2019, it probably would have been a big hit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll have a good legacy.
So I was happy to see it. It got director. I was like, Spielberg gonna get in? That was the only top category I predicted all 5.
Nice.
Because most people were predicting that Villeneuve would get in for Dune, and I was never feeling that. I thought, because like they've announced a sequel, I just was like, that's going to get picture. I don't think it's going to make it in for director.
The funny thing is, I never doubted Spielberg, because he never should. He always gets in. Lately, all his movies that are intended
he doesn't always
for, when his movie is intended for like Oscar love, it always gets in Best Picture, no matter how well it does otherwise. The Post, War Horse, all these movies that
Bridge of Spies.
And he always gets in Best Director when he's like seriously in contention for it. So like,
gotcha.
I think The Color Purple was the last time he was really. It was a surprising miss for Spielberg. So I never doubt him anymore.
God, I always forget that. That's right. He didn't get a director nom for Color Purple, but it got 11 nominations.
I'm surprised he predicted the Denis snub. That's impressive.
That was my two impressive. It was that, and I predicted that both Kristen Stewart and Penelope Cruz would get nominated.
Nice.
Those are my two, like, those are my standout moments. I'm like, crap, I actually have a video on YouTube where I'm predicting stuff. Like, what if it's just a complete wash and every category is different? I'm gonna feel so stupid. I was just at least happy I got a couple of those big predictions right.
The funny thing about Denis missing, I actually just recently went back and looked at my old texts with my editor from when I saw Dune in Venice at its premiere. Like it was getting
that must have been
eyes. Cool. It was cool, I have to say. And I was
speaking of Italy.
I was speaking of Italy, heard of it. I was texting him about what I think he could do Oscar-wise, and I was saying that it's going to sweep the text, no doubt about it. Probably picture, but I was doubtful at the time of him getting into Best Director. I even said, like, I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think it's
like August.
September.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying, like, it said, like, I don't think Denis gets in, even if the movie does really well otherwise. And I wish I'd stuck with that, because it seemed inevitable.
You were predicting he would get in.
I was, I predicted him and Spielberg.
It's a specific kind of genre that I feel like doesn't always do well for director. Like when you have 10 nominations, it's gonna get in there, but when you have only 5, and now it's almost predictable that one of the 5 will go to a foreign film director, like we had it happen again for Drive My Car. There's only so many slots, and I'm like, that's the one that I think might just miss.
Yeah, I just like it. It is not the type of movie they usually give Best Director to in terms of genre, but in terms of like the big technical movie, there's usually one of those in Best Director. I'm thinking of like Gravity, Mad Max, those types of movies.
True. Yeah. No, you're right.
Technical showcases. They usually get into Best Director, so that's why I was backing it.
Yeah. If Alfonso Cuarón can win for Gravity, I guess it makes sense. It's a movie like Dune. I mean, it's such a director's medium, that movie. Like what he did with that. As I just listened to the Oscar Wilde podcast, and what did Nick say? Like, did this movie direct itself? And there's always that, like, when a movie gets a lot of like technical nominations and gets a picture, it's like, well, who made the movie?
Right. I mean, at that point, it's you're recognizing the individual people who were in charge of those elements, which is applaudable, obviously, but you're not rewarding the person who like brought it all together.
But it's not. Isn't it like to get a director nomination? It's only directors nominating that, right?
Correct.
It's not everybody.
Branch. Nope. Yeah. And that's true of all the different categories. So it's the writers branch votes on the screenplay nominations, visual effects people vote on the visual effects nominations, and directors.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the winner, is that everybody?
Yes.
That's everybody. It's to get nominated. It's only that.
Right. Yeah. And for nominations for Best Picture, everybody votes on that. So everybody has the same
Best Picture. Everybody votes on.
And their individual category. And then for winners, everybody votes on everything.
So you're in the director's branch. You can only nominate director and picture, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have no say over the other categories for nominations. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's interesting.
That makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense though. Like you wouldn't want like other branches to be nominating it makes sense that you would.
Right. The idea is it's like the quote unquote experts are going to determine what is the best in the category, which I think makes sense. So the
expert directors are nominating. You'd think that they would have Villeneuve in there.
Exactly. What happened? You think they would look
at
it.
Why would they go with like Kenneth Branagh over Villeneuve?
It's also a thing of, the director's branch more. And this is the funny thing about predicting nominations for so long is that you can kind of see what the tastes of the different branches are.
Okay.
What they like, what they value as on film. And the director's branch is very insular and very like clubby. So once you're in the club and don't like Ben Affleck. So once you're like in the club, you can kind of coast on that pretty easily after a while.
Okay.
And Denis does have one nomination. You got in for Arrival.
I had to look that up. I'm like, has he been nominated? He has. Okay,
yes. But they clearly like PTA, Spielberg, Branagh, these people that they've nominated before can't be in.
And then can't be in the first woman to get two.
And then Hamaguchi really cool. Feels like they usually go for one like, I like Drive My Car, but one like fancy art house pick. It's that's why it was pretty easy to predict that Hamaguchi would get into Best Director, even if he didn't think he was getting picture.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's so interesting to me. I feel like I'm gonna have to bump this episode up to mid-March because we have so much talk. Originally this was gonna be April 8th, and as like we're talking, I'm like, I think I might have to bump this up to the end of March, right before the show, because we talked so much.
50-50 Vampire Circus 2021 Oscars episode.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love it. It's fantastic. All right, so let's go to the final segment here, Beyond the Flick. So I thought we'd talk about obscure or overlooked 70s horror films. Are there 2 or 3 from those 10 years that you feel like don't get talked about a lot today that you'd recommend? Anything?
Yeah, I got a couple options for you. So in terms of, even though I am a horror fan, in terms of 70s horror, I haven't seen a ton of really undervalued films like on the level of Vampire Circus.
Okay, like
so my picks are a little bit more, I don't want to say mainstream, but I wouldn't be surprised if most people listening to this would be like, I know that movie. But anyway, my first is the film. It's House. Who directed this movie?
Right, the foreign film House from that was on the Criterion Collection. I was thinking of the movie House from the 80s. I was like,
no.
That movie's pretty well. Like,
no.
That movie's a crazy. That movie's crazy too. But yeah, the 70s one, which I saw Japan. With my friends one night, we put it on. I think we rented the Criterion disc, and that movie is insane.
One of the wildest things I've ever seen in my life. Not even movies, just thing. And it's a Japanese movie from 1977. It's experimental and it's kind of like even funny in some parts.
Yeah, it's got humor.
It's also, if you are willing to go with it, it is a kind of incredibly profound metaphor for modern Japan post the bomb dropping, because it's following this generation of younger girls who the idea is they're the first generation that was born after the bomb had dropped, who had no impression and knowledge of what that was like before and during World War II. And so it's kind of a metaphor for that, but also it is just absolutely bonkers movie that has some of, like I said, the wildest things I've ever seen in my entire life. It's so good.
I think there's a YouTube video of Bill Hader in the Criterion Closet, and he looks at house, and he talks about how, I think he says like, Fred Armisen turned me on to this movie, and it is spectacular.
Yeah,
like he talks about it in that video. It's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was like 77, something like that.
77.
Okay, cool. Do you have any others?
Yes. This one, I wouldn't call it good, but it definitely is very of its time and place. It's called Tourist Trap.
That's my number one pick.
Oh my God, really?
That movie, which I read about in Stephen King's Dance Macabre book about, I think it was that book that I read about it first. And I remember it was hard to find for a while. It was like in college. Like I was like, oh, this sounds really creepy. I want to find this. And it took me a while, but I've seen it 3 or 4 times. It's usually on Shudder, which I have a subscription to, and every few years I watch it. It's so good, and I feel like nobody really talks about it.
I know. I first heard about it when my local art house played it, and they, as a midnight a few years ago.
Oh, you saw it in a theater?
I didn't see it in theater. No,
okay.
But I was playing there, and they set up these mannequins in the lobby that are the mannequins from Tourist Trap, because it's a movie about, a haunted tourist attraction, for lack of a better word, full of mannequins. And
mannequins, creepy mannequins.
Yeah, it's the kind of movie that I find weirdly comforting. Like it just reminds me of kind of cozy Halloween time. You're gonna watch it.
I love like young people driving down the road, and they see this. Oh, let's stop over at this. This is kind of like off the beaten track. Let's check it out. That kind of Texas Chainsaw vibe, and where it goes is really unusual and unexpected and creepy.
Yeah, I really like that one.
That's a great choice. I really like Tourist Trap. That's the one.
Sorry, I stole one from you.
No, that's fine. I'm glad that you've heard of it and that you've seen it. It's really great. And that, like, if there's like a 70s horror film that people want to watch that they might not have heard of, that's usually the one. Not to say I get asked that every day. if I were to be asked that, I mean, that's the title I would tell them. So Tourist Trap would be my number one. Let's see. I liked Let's Scare Jessica to Death last year.
That was one of
coming up on. I couldn't decide if this was. I mean, it's not obscure. I feel like most people know it. I don't know if a lot of people actually watched Wes Craven's debut, Last House on the Left. I feel like people know the title, but if people really watched it, it's really worth a look. It's a really interesting film. We're going to get to it in August.
That one's brutal. That's one of the most brutal movies I've ever seen in my life. Just the tone of it and the content, just nasty.
Feels like you're watching a documentary, and
it feels like the fact that it's
him. This, who would go on to just such great success with Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, and to see his origins, I feel like it's very interesting coming from someone who was a teacher and a professor and who had never watched anything but Disney movies until he got to college. And for that to be his first movie, it's just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an interesting way of looking at the world, because it's so nihilistic.
Like, he was told by Sean Cunningham, I believe it was, to write and direct. We'll give you some money to write and direct a horror film, and then that's the movie he decided to do. It's just like, it's really crazy. It's
I watched that movie. I have a horror podcast which I'll plug at the end of the episode. I watched that movie. We were gonna cover that movie, and it's one of the rare times that we watched that movie and we were like, I don't think I want to talk about that. It's just so nasty, and I enjoyed it in a weird way, which feels weird to say. It's very impressive as a first. I think it's his first movie.
It's his first feature film,
but it's just, oof, boy, just rough, just hard.
So it'll be a tricky conversation. I have an old friend that's going to be my guest for that, who we both interned for Wes Craven's production company.
Oh my God.
In 2007. And so we're big Craven fans. We're going to talk about that in a few months. So that's coming up. But let's see. I don't know if you call it a horror film, Phantom of the Paradise by Brian De Palma. I just watched. It's kind of got some like macabre vibes to it. That's a movie. I feel like some people know the title, but I had not. I'm a huge De Palma fan. Like, I've seen like everything he's done, and somehow that one had escaped me until I bought the just one day. I bought the Blu-ray from Scream Factory. And it just blew my mind. I loved it. I just love that movie. So that would be on my list. So my other two, the big ones are, I love the work of David Cronenberg, and I really love his horror films from the 70s. My favorite would be Rabid, which is just, have you seen Rabid? Which is like, I
haven't seen it. No.
Like a really creepy. It's got like kids and like munching on adults, and it's just like, it's got like it's got kind of like a cannibal vampire vibe to it, and it's very low budget, but lots of scenes of like eerie moments and brutal violence, but always entertaining. Rabid, and what was the other one? Shivers, which I haven't seen in a while. But I feel like we really think of Cronenberg starting in the 80s with films like The Dead Zone and The Fly and Dead Ringers. But he started in, obviously Canada and in the 70s, and he made some really great films there. And then my other one would be an episode we did last year, The House That Dripped Blood, which is an anthology horror film that was probably the most entertaining horror film discovery of the podcast thus far. It's a mix of 4 different stories. Peter Cushing is in one. Christopher Lee is in one. One is about a writer who's writing a horror novel, and the villain of his novel is coming to life right before him and killing people off in his town as he's writing the book. And it's just like got like a lot of creative stories in it and always entertaining. There's not a bad story in the bunch. Usually with these anthology horror films, I don't know how many you've seen, but
yeah,
be like 2 really good ones and then 2 that are boring and you don't care.
Yeah, lately especially I've been really burned by anthology horror movies.
Yeah,
like ABCs of Death and some of the VHS movies. Not so good.
And it's not really a genre you see much now with streaming and stuff. It's not really a thing. Like it'll just be like a series, like it'll be just 1 episode per story now. But back in the 70s and 60s, a lot of these films really enjoy. My favorite is Creepshow from '82. That movie is I love that movie. But this one was really great, and I expected nothing. I was like, oh, we'll try this one. That's kind of like a Vampire Circus. I'm just like, I don't really know anything about it. Let's put it on and see how it goes. And I loved every minute of it. And it didn't make my top 10 of 71, but it was actually close. It was like, all right, it was like 12.
I know it well by its title. I've never seen it, but you're making me really want to see it.
There is no house that drips blood in the movie, Cody.
Okay, well, now I'm not watching it. Never mind.
Speaking of titles, right? As I said at the beginning, right? Vampire Circus. We get vampires. We get a circus. House of Drip Blood. We do get a house, or at least 1 house.
Okay.
But you don't get any blood. You don't get any. You get blood, but you don't get any houses
but
dripping.
Never
blood.
The twain shall meet. Got it. Okay.
Right. So yeah, I'd recommend that one too. So yeah, those are some great titles, and my number one for sure would be Tourist Trap. Check it out. When Stephen King is recommending it as early as the 70s, like you're in good company. And I've read a lot of his work where he recommends old TV shows like Thriller with Boris Karloff and some of these things way ahead of its time. I think Tourist Trap was ahead of its time, and I don't know how it just kind of fell through the cracks there, but it's a really good one. Like, check it out.
Nice.
All right, so that takes us to the end here, Cody. Thanks for being on for this episode. Half Vampire Circus, half the Academy Awards. I think we will be dropping this one in mid-March, so that it's a little bit more timely.
Yeah,
a little more timely
too
for our listeners that are, if they're listening in mid-April, they're like, what's happening right now? So yeah, that'll be perfect. So let our listeners know where they can find you online, and what would you like to plug? Tell us more about your horror podcasts.
Yeah, of course. So I write for Next Best Picture, which is a Oscar website that podcasts and writes about Oscars all year round and movies in general. So I'm all over that. But I'm on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram at CodyMonster91. And if you liked me talking about this excellent horror film, you can hear me talking about other spooky movies with my friend Kira on my podcast, Halloweeners, a horror movie podcast. You can find it at Halloweeners Pod on socials.
Very cool. How do you pick your movies for that? Do you just pick films at random?
Willy-nilly,
just what we feel like?
Vibes. Yeah, we recently did one on the new Scream because it just came out, obviously. But usually it's just kind of whatever we're feeling. We have a master list. We'll just kind of pick a movie.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's where I couldn't do one like that where I'm just like picking at random. I like this podcast with it's like it has to strictly be rules. Like 50 years ago because I have just a small window of time to talk about a movie. And so if I was just like, okay, we're going to talk about any horror film ever made, just pick what we feel like this week to the next, that'd be hard because you really have to think about like, well, what am I feeling right now? Are we going? Well, we like to mix it up. Will you do like any decade? Will you go like old school?
Yeah, well, we try to mix it up. We'll do like if we've done a lot of new ones, we'll go back older to the 30s. Or
cool.
Done one in English, we'll do a foreign language one just to kind of mix it up a little bit.
Have you done a horror film in the last few weeks that our listeners might not know very much about that you would recommend?
We did probably not, but our most like obscure recent one was we did Silent Night Deadly Night around Christmas time.
Oh, okay.
Not a good movie, but we had fun.
Have you seen the sequel? Now we're talking.
Of course not. Absolutely not.
That's the one with 4 sequels, right? Silent Night Deadly Night from the 80s.
They all have.
Yeah, there's 4 sequels. Mickey Rooney's in the 5th one.
Oh, okay. Well, now you're selling
Silent
me.
Night, Deadly Night 2, Garbage Day is fantastic.
Yes, that's how I know it. That's how I know it.
So great. I watched it with a friend in the summer once. I said, you have to watch this.
Christmas in July.
Not great as in it's good. Great as in it's very funny and just crazy.
Right.
I have not seen the original. Is it pretty bad?
Yeah, it's interesting.
I need to see that one.
Don't watch it in the summer.
I'll watch it in December.
Yeah. It's all right. It's very dark, very brutal. It's about like trauma, like most movies are. But I recommend it. And then listen to our episode on it.
I will listen to it. Very cool. Well, thanks for being here, Cody. Thanks to all of you for listening. You can find us online at filmat50.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And check out my new YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video, talking mostly about the Academy Awards and Oscars history. So check that out at Brian Rowe Video. Until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.